time to get up. I cannot go to school today, said little Peggy Ann McKay. I have the measles and the mumps, a gash, a rash, and purple bumps. My mouth is wet, my throat is dry. I'm going blind in my right eye. My tonsils are as big as rocks. I've counted 16 chicken pox. And there's one more. That's 17. And don't you think my face looks green? My leg is cut. My eyes are blue. It might be instamatic flu. I cough and sneeze and gasp and choke. I'm sure my left leg is broke. My hip hurts when I move my chin. My belly button's caving in. My back is wrenched. My ankles sprained. My appendix page each time it rains. My nose is cold. My toes are numb. I have a sliver in my thumb. My neck is stiff. My spine is weak. I hardly whisper when I speak. My tongue is filling up my mouth. I think my hair is falling out. My elbows bent. My spine ain't straight. My temperature is 108. My brain is shrunk. I cannot hear. There is a hole inside my ear. I have a hangnail and my heart is... What? What's that? What's that you say? You say today is Saturday? Goodbye. I'm going out to play. What was that? Oh, that's the Chipper Players. Who are they? They're a bunch of third graders from Indiana State Laboratory School. What do? They entertain people with skits, poems, songs, you name it, they'll do it. Can we see more? Of course. Let's go. Okay. Now we will do some poems we say together. The first poem is Listen. Listen to the witch. Grinch, grinch, grunch. Chip, chop, crunch. Rickle, grabble, grooble, grooble, munch, munch, munch. Whatever in the world is she having for lunch?
Okay, stand up.
The next poem we will do is the popping song. Pop is how the weasel goes. Pop means in you scoot. Pop is how you smash a bat or a firecracker shoot. Pop is how your toast gets up. Pop is what you drink. Pop is someone's father too. But best of all, I think, is popcorn. Poppity pop, pop, pop. Filling the popper right up to the top. And the next one, Someone. Someone came knocking at my wee small door. Someone came knocking, I'm sure, sure, sure. I listened, I opened, I looked to the left and right, but not a was a stirring in the still dark night. Only the busy beetles tapping at the wall. Only from the forest the So I know not who came knocking at all, at all, at all.
And hooray for chocolate.
Chocolate pudding, chocolate candy, chocolate drink, I think it's dandy. Chocolate fudge and donuts too, covered with thick chocolate goo. Chocolate cookies, chocolate cake, in a cone I always take chocolate. Or chocolate chip, or chocolate covered dairy dip. Boy, oh boy, it would be nice if there were only chocolate rice, chocolate spinach, stew and fish, chocolate in every dish.
Now we'll do poems that we say ourselves, and Richard announced the first one. This poem is called Some Cook. Johnny made a custard in a pepper pot, flavored it with mustard, put on quite a lot of garlic, fried in olive oil, brought the custard to a boil, ate it up and burnt his tongue. You shouldn't cook when you're too young. That was very good, Richard. Now we'll do a poem that was Sean will do himself. Well, we thought we'd do Betty Batter with an English accent so you could hear the T's better. Betty Batter bought some butter. Bet she said this better's bitter. When I put it in my butter, it would make all my butter better. So she bought some better and put it in her bitter batter to make all her bitter batter better. Now we'll do some sayings from Almanac, and we did this in our bicentennial play.
Beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship.
The sleeping fox catches no poultry. Up, up.
Be ashamed to catch itself idle. He that goes a-bothering goes a-sorrowing. The rotten apple spoils his companions.
The worst wheel of the cart makes the most noise. Constant dropping wears away stones.
If you would know the value of money, go and try to borrow some.
Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Who is strong? He who can conquer his bad habits. The empty bag
Cannot stand upright.
Lost time is never found again.
The used key is always bright.
Poverty wants some things, luxury many things, avarice all things. Now we'll do some poems that we wrote ourselves. Now we'll do Columbus. When Columbus went to the king, he had bad luck, but the queen, she said, "Oh, I think it's King." She gave him the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Aquina. No, that's not right. The Santa Maria. The sailors said we're scared of sea creatures, but Columbus yelled, "There aren't such features." People said the world was flat, but Columbus found that the world was round. When he landed on Puerto Rico, he might have met an Indian named Chico. He might have found spices of gold, but what he really found, I haven't been told. This is another poem that we did by ourselves. It's about a special day that my class had. It's called A Special Day. Thursday was a special day. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Science was really great. We talked about disintegrate. Dr. Baxter's class came on the run. We really had a lot of fun. Today we are going to have a rye bread party. You gotta admit it's gonna be hearty. No one likes to fight wars, but we're going to do a poem about two generals who didn't want to fight, but they had to, so now we're going to do a poem called The Generals. Said General K to General Gore, "Oh, must we fight this silly war? To kill and die is such a bore." "I quite agree," said General Gore. Said General Gore to General Clay, "We could go to the beach today and have some ice cream on the way." "A grand idea," said General Clay. Said General Clay to General Gore, "We'll build sandcastles on the shore," said General Gore. "We'll splash and play." "Let's leave right now," said General Clay. Said General Gore to General Clay, "But what if the sea is closed today, and what if the sand's been blown away?" "A dreadful thought," said General Clay. Said General Gore to General Clay, "I've always feared the ocean spray, and we may drown, it's true we may." "It chills my blood," said General Clay. Said General Clay to General Gore, "My bathing suit is slightly tore. We'd better go on with our war." "I quite agree," said General Gore. Then General Clay charged General Gore as blows flew, cannons roar. And now at last there is no more of General Clay or General Gore. I know a little cupboard with a teeny tiny key, and there's a jar of lollipops for me, me, me. It has a little shelf, my dear, as dark can be, and there's a dish of Banbury cakes for me, me, me. I have a small fat grandmama with a very slippery knee, and she's the keeper of the cupboard with the key, key, key. And when I'm very good, my dear, as good can be, there's Banbury cakes and lollipops for me, me, me. Now we'll do some poems with actions, and this one is a Spanish dance. Why don't you try a Spanish dance? It is very dashing and gay. Stomp and step and click your heels. Twist and turn round like a fast wheel. The music is a rhythm. Makes your feet move along with them. Why don't you try a Spanish dance? Dance your blues away. Hey, hey, ole! In the winter, some people go skiing, and I'm going skiing with my class today. Ready, class? Put on your hat. Okay. Your skis. Yeah. All right. Oh, man. Get your sticks. Okay. Ready to go? Yeah. Let's get our goggles. Okay. Let's go. Okay. I'm very good at skiing. I have a kind of knack, for I can do it front ways and also on my back. And when I reach the bottom, I give a sudden flop and dig myself in sideways, and that's the way I stop. Like this. This play or song is called Grand the Duke of York, and we did this in our first play, and we did it in 4 actions, but now we'll do it in 1. And we'll do it the fastest way.
The Grand Duke of York. He had 10,000 men. He marched them over there. I don't march like it. Doing the rough,
We've done a lot of dramatizations, but we can only show you one. So we will do the Columbus scene. May I help you?
I want to go west. My name is Christopher Columbus, and I want to go westward to India. Would you take my son?
I can take your child. I know the Queen and King if you would like to talk to them, and I could talk to them for you.
Thank you.
Just follow me. Go answer it. We would like to talk to the Queen.
There's a very important visitor that would like to talk to you.
Send them in.
Come on.
Thank you. Your Royal Highness, this is a very important visitor. His name is Christopher Columbus. It sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
I want to have some ships. I want to go westward to India instead of eastward.
I'll have to talk to my advisors.
They would never return back to you.
It's a ridiculous idea.
They never come back.
What do you think?
It's a crazy idea.
I'll make you the richest queen in your world, Your Highness.
The idea appeals to me. I will give you the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
Well, thank you, Your Highness. Thank you.
What's wrong? Are you crazy? Yeah. When we did a program for the English conference, we had a very famous author. His name was Jesse Stewart, and we did 3 of his poems. But we're just going to do one right now, and it's called Hold April. Hold on to April, never let her pass. Another year before she come again, to bring us wind as clean as polished glass, and apple blossoms in soft silver rain. Hold April when there's music in the air, when life is resurrected like a dream. When wild birds sing up flights of windy stair, and bees love alder blossoms by the stream. Hold April's face, close yours and look afar. Hold April in your arms in dear romance. While holding her, look to the sun and stars, and with her in her fairy dreamland dance. Do not let April go, but hold her tight. Month of eternal beauty and delight.
I'm not a Chipper player anymore, but I used to be. And Mrs. Chipper asked me to do a poem now, so I thought I'd do one of my favorites when I was in 2nd grade in her class. So I've asked Erin to help me do a poem called Us Two by A.A. Milne. Wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh in me. Whatever I do, he wants to do.
Where are you going today?
Says Pooh.
Well, that's very odd, because I was too. Let's go together.
Says Pooh, says he.
Let's go together.
Says Pooh. What's twice 11, I said to Pooh.
Twice what?
Said Pooh to me. I think it ought to be 22.
Just what I think myself.
Said Pooh.
It wasn't an easy sum to do, but that's what it is.
Said Pooh, said he.
That's what it is.
Said Pooh. Let's look for dragons, I said for Pooh.
Yes, let's.
Said Pooh to me. We crossed the river and found a few.
Yes, those are dragons, all right.
Said Pooh.
As soon as I saw their beaks, I knew. That's what they are.
Said Pooh, said he.
That's what they are.
Said Pooh. Let's frighten the dragons, I said to Pooh.
That's right.
Said Pooh to me. I'm not afraid, I said to Pooh, and I held his paw and I shouted, shoo! So silly old dragons, and off they flew.
I wasn't afraid.
Said Pooh, said he.
I'm never afraid with you.
So wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh and me. What would I do, I said to Pooh, if it wasn't for you? And Pooh said, true.
It isn't much fun for one, but two can stick together.
Says Pooh, says he.
That's how it is.
Says Pooh.
Roger, Jay, Randy, David, Aaron, Leonard, David, Sean, Ben, Sunder, Fred, Donna, Carol, Margaret, Richard, Mike, Chris, Orrin, Cliff. Would you like to try to do a play like that? Do you think we could? Well, yes. Well, let's go try. All right.
Hello. We've just seen, along with you, the tape of the Chipper Players exploring literature. And now we have with us in the studio Mrs. Chipper. You know, at the end of that tape, they said that we should try to do some of the things they've done with literature ourselves. And so we brought Mrs. Chipper in, and we're going to ask her a few questions in hopes that we'll be able to understand a little more about how she does it. With me in the studio today are two other professors at Indiana State whom I'd like to introduce you to. First of all, Jessie McCune, who is an assistant professor in the Department of English. Then Vanita Gibbs, who's a professor in the Department of Elementary Education. And then Mrs. Chipper, Eva Chipper, who is third grade teacher and assistant professor of elementary education in the laboratory school. I'm Sherry Pattison, and we hope that we are able to ask you some questions that you would want the answers. We are able to ask Mrs. Chipper some questions that you'd want the answers to. First of all, Eva, I'd like to know how you first got started. What first motivated you to work with the children and to do some of the things that we saw in the tape just a few minutes ago?
Of course, I've always read to the children, and I've always enjoyed poetry and dramatizations myself. And I have always spent a lot of time reading to the children and letting them listen to good poetry and good stories. But the reason that I really put together a program came about in a strange way. I was teaching a first grade in a school in Indianapolis, and the principal decided that they didn't have enough people who came to the PTA meetings. So he came one day and he said, you've been selected to have a program for the parents, and by the way, I do not want this to be a program just for the parents of your children. This should be something that everybody else should enjoy. You know, that isn't so easy to do. But all I then did is we read some of the poetry together, and the children read it, and then we read it in parts, and the children introduced some of the poetry. And it started out by a very, very simple program, but I thought the children enjoyed it, and the people seemed to enjoy it, and so I thought maybe I'll go from there and do a little bit more things that a public would enjoy, not only the children themselves. That is really the beginning of our programs that we have done here at the Lab School and also in other places where I have taught.
I see. So you were chosen to put on a program.
I was chosen not because, I'm sure not because the principal thought I could do a good job. He just chose me because he came to my room and this is what he thought I should do. But it worked really very well, and I've always had interest in children's theater, and I was glad to try something a little bit more ambitious like a program. And of course all three of you have been so kind to come to my room and have, by your ideas and by your encouragement, I've done more and more.
I was going to ask you, because when we do come to see you, it's almost like the finished product that you did for the PTA meeting. If we wait too long in the year, one year you invited us over early in September, and that was rewarding for the students, but also frustrating because they thought, oh goodness, how will I ever be able to do what Mrs. Chipper does?
Yes, I think this is one of the questions my students invariably ask. How does she start? How does she get the youngsters started?
Each year.
Frankly, I feel the same way each year. I feel, I remember the children at the end of the year, and I know how well they did, how much they enjoyed it, how well they worked together, and how the whole thing evolved. And when I start all fresh again, it seems the same as to your students. And I feel, very often I feel, now this year I'm not going to do anything because these children really are not interested. But it's sort of, slowly it grows again, and it changes every year. As you know, the kind of children I have, this year having 17 boys and 3 girls. So boys, of course, are a little bit more active than girls, let's face it. They like to jump up and down a little more. So we concentrated a little more on action songs, on in other words, on more movements. When you saw the Spanish dance, you know they put all into it. For the bicentennial, we did some dances of the ages, and they enjoyed that a lot. Or, the Grand Old Duke of York, which we do enforced slowly, and then they did a little fast. And they really enjoyed all the things that had a lot of action in it.
And Eva, that reminds me of another thing, that you say that boys are active, and therefore you use that active nature they have for certain poems. Now, can you also tell us some things that you have seen poetry doing for children, which would be the reverse of that?
It may not be exactly the reverse of that, but I think it does. First of all, you see, we're all trying to teach children how to read, but we want them to enjoy how to read. I mean, just to know how to read is not all we want to do. And obviously, when I enjoy reading to them, they like to repeat it, and they will, I hope, as I say, it's always worked so far. There's always a time maybe when it won't. Right. I know you feel like this too with your students. But they have always enjoyed reading. They have enjoyed speaking. They have enjoyed dramatizing. In other words, putting themselves into another character. And you see, you asked me before, how do I start out? The main thing is that I start out by what you would call choral reading, when everybody reads at the same time and can sort of hide behind the next person. Doesn't have to feel that he's shy or he doesn't know how to read. It's sort of this is the way I start. We start by all reading together. Then we start out by reading and somebody taking a part. Then we start out by dancing. Then we do, it sort of evolves from one. Then we sing and we do actions with the songs. And then, Jessie, I have to thank you for encouraging me to do that. Once you came with your class and the children read some poems that they had written themselves, and you were so thrilled with that.
Indeed, and so were my students.
And so I have done that.
Yes.
I have done a lot of that. I've let them do their own poetry, too.
I noticed they had some of their poetry in the program.
Right. I don't know if you noticed that, but you see, we had, the children always eat white bread, and I, being of European descent, want to teach them a few things that I think they should know, like as I think it would be better for them occasionally to try some other bread. And so my husband, who bakes bread, baked me some bread, and we said we'll have a rye bread party. And so they all had we all had rye bread, and then they sent him that poem and sent him some letters. In fact, I remember one of the children said, "Thank you so much for baking bread for us. I didn't like it, but I know it must have been delicious."
Well, so you begin by reading to the children yourself. Then you have the children work in choral reading.
Right.
Then gradually you assign individual parts. So during the course of the year, what you're doing becomes more complex, but you begin rather simply.
Right.
Now, are there any poems that are just almost certain successes? Any poems that you think are pretty much going to be a surefire hit with the children?
I stopped today. I didn't have any poems at home, but I want to show you the way I usually give each child a poem, and this is proof that it's being used. I stopped at my little neighbors who was in my class, and I thought, well, I'll let you what the children like. They sort of, they love to hear a mother talk to them in a voice that they're used to, and there's one that I think you have enjoyed. It's called I Don't Like Don't. I don't, and it starts by, I hear a million don'ts a day, no matter what I do, they say. And now they take each one apart, and they, put a lot into this. Now don't do this, and don't do that. Don't interrupt. Don't tease the cat. Don't bite your nails. Don't slam the door. Don't leave those messes on the floor. And it goes on, each, and they don't point that gun. Don't touch the tray. And they love it and don't forget to blow your nose. And then at the end it says, I don't like don't one little bit. Look. Now they've got me saying it. See, they like this.
Now, I was going to ask you, what is some good advice for students in this getting started? And you've already shown me one way to be a good model.
Right. To read well to the children, they'll be motivated to read well themselves.
I thought I should. And then another one they like, because this is, they get up and they do this certain, motion that they like. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Here comes my train down the railroad track. Clickety-clay, clickety-clay. I'm going to Grandma's for Thanksgiving Day. And here then they put in a few of their own. They say, oh, goodbye, I'm leaving. And then the grandma comes and, she'll say some of the things that they hear their grandmother say. Oh, you've grown so much. Or, I haven't seen you in a long time. So they can add all their own little things into it. And then they change it. I'm going to Grandma's for Christmas Day or to spend my vacation, or then they add some things to that. These are the things that they like to do, where they all can do the chorus so that everybody can have a part in it. Clickety-clack, clickety-clay, clickety-clome. I'm on, and then they love to say, I'm on the train, headed for home. And then they add it again here. The father comes, and he's so happy to see him, and the brother comes, and he wants to play baseball with him. They add all these little things to it.
It's a real experience.
They like that. Or then a third one that I want to, there's thousands of them. They, once you start out, you'll find hundreds of poems that they like. But we did the Gingerbread Man, and this is another, it's sort of a technique that's very good. It starts out by saying, the gingerbread man gave a gingery shout. Quick, open the oven, let me out. And see, they like to pretend they're the gingerbread man. And then they meet all these different animals, and one animal after another follows the gingerbread man. And see, now they like it because everybody has a part in it. And at the end, he meets meets, of course, the fox. And then he said, but when he stepped under the fox's nose, something happened. What do you suppose? The fox gave a snap. The fox gave a yawn. You know, they love that. And the gingerbread man was gone, gone, gone. See, these are the kind of things they enjoy.
Eva, I wanted to ask, I noticed you had some poems of the bicentennial, and you had a poem on Columbus, and I know you have prepared programs for our English conference.
Right.
Is this a general procedure in the classroom to pick a theme or to pick a holiday, or is there some underlying?
Well, I know what you mean. Well, we've done 3 programs for the English conference, and they picked the theme for me. One was literature all around the world, which was very easy. You know, we did a French song, and we did a French fairy tale, and then we did a Russian song, and we did it was funny. I said, I don't know Russian, but I know Czech. And so one of the children said, well, that's fine. I'll say, my teacher doesn't know Russian, but she knows Czech, which is, and I explained to them, you know, it's in the same family of languages, and they said, so we will now sing you a Czech song. So, you know, each one had a chance to kind of introduce it in a different way. That was the theme for the conference 3 years ago. And then we had, I believe,
Jessamine West.
The second, then the next conference was the meaning of English. And we wrote little invitations where we said, Mrs. Chipper's 3rd graders will try to explain the meaning of English. And we started out with a pantomime and showed that people will understand each other even without saying a word. And then we went into all kinds of things, you know, and then this year, of course, the bicentennial. So the theme, the theme was kind of given to us.
As you've explained this, you've said the children did writing, and they do speaking, of course, with their choral reading. They do reading to do that, and they also do listening because they are their best audience themselves. So the language arts are all integrated in what you do, but it seems to be also, Eva, that as I observe your class and watch them and interact with them, that this program becomes a catalyst for your total plan of instruction. Do you see it that way? I think it's a nice catalyst, but I'm just wondering if you might cite some accomplishments as a result of using that as a medium for all of the instruction that you do throughout the year.
I think you're right. You see, as you said, all the skills have to be used in order to make a program be a good program. And of course, we get a lot of fan mail, you know, and they love that. Everybody's very kind, writes some notes, and even the children write notes, you know. And so that's something that makes them feel very happy and very important, which is supposed to be good for children to feel. So
good for all of us.
Yeah, that's right.
Of course, they also get social studies
right, when we did the stories around the world, you know, that was...
I think they even do a little research, don't they?
Yes, certainly. There's many words that they don't know that they do go and look up.
Well, yes, one of the poems they read had extremely difficult vocabulary.
Remember in Jessie Stewart's poems, they had names of birds that I didn't know, so they all volunteered to
look them up.
Which
is science also.
Right. Developing research skills then. Right. Now, you've talked to us about how you get started and about some of the goals that you see in the program, the ways that all types of learning are integrated into this one experience. Could you tell us a few of the problems that you have?
You know, the problems are like any other problems that you have, daily problems you have in a classroom. I always think, you won't mind, Vanita, if I say that all instructors should always come back to the classroom occasionally to be sure that they don't teach their students things that are so unrealistic. I mean, you know, people, when I used to take classes, they'll say, if your program is good, there will not be any discipline problems. Well, most of the time there will not be any discipline problems. Naturally, there are problems. At first, the children are very shy, and they don't want to speak up. Then, as time goes on, they want to be the whole thing. And if you have a competitive group, as I had last year, they would count the words that children would say. Who had more words to conversation.
I do.
And he had, now these are the kind of problems, but if you didn't have these problems, you would have problems of maybe boredom or problems of not achieving the things that you really want to achieve. That is the love of literature and drama.
That's never evident in your classroom.
So that is, they do, and of course you see they have to learn to work as a group, and once in a while there's behavior that you don't like to tolerate when they are selfish and not helpful, and you want to stress that the whole thing will only be right if they all help. And these are the kind of problems that you might encounter, but they're not different.
It seems to me they're all very helpful to each other. How do you manage to achieve that?
Well, this is sort of a constant process, I always think you do not teach by preaching. You really only teach by example. And I really think that if you try to be helpful and you try to listen to them and you try to, as much as you can, you try to make them feel that each one of them is important, then they will be helpful and pleasant to each other. It's not it's not a utopia. It's not a perfect situation, but you do see examples of, a child forgetting a poem book and another one giving him his, or running back and picking something up that somebody forgot. So this is, I hope, this is what you do really by example, that you do, if you feel that everyone is important and you do not have any stars, you do not make the stars. I mean, there are children who obviously enjoy this better, who are from home used to speaking and being appreciated, and others who are not. But you let them know that each one is important in a play and in daily living, really.
So all the children are involved all of the time. You don't all have something special and important that is theirs, that they do.
And you see, you must realize so many children are not there on the day when you give a program, on the day when you've invited the parents, on the day when you have invited another room. So they learn, they know that they have to know everybody's part, and they do. And in fact, sometimes when you talk about problems, I felt so badly when one child was happy that somebody else was sick. He wanted to show me that he could do it just as well.
Well, now you said everyone has to know everyone's part. Do you have them memorized?
Never. They never memorize. Now, I shouldn't say they don't. If they want to, they can, and many of them will say, I don't need my poem book, which is fine. But many, I never demand a memorization from them at all, because I don't want them to feel that they make mistakes. I want them to, I always tell them, nobody knows that you've made a mistake. To say something or cover it up somehow. No, you do not need to memorize, which is very important.
I think they're learning the poetry in the best possible way, which is probably memory, but it's repetition and repetition that they enjoy.
And I feel, sometimes I'll say, I think we need to reread that, don't you? So they reread with a purpose, which is also very important for reading. You reread, but not in order to read it for the third time, which you don't want to do. You reread it in order to remember that your part was here, there. So it's rereading with a purpose that isn't just plain routine,
Right. Now we're almost out of time, so I wonder if you could just sort of give us one of the major rewards in the years that you've been working with the children. One of them, I know you've found many, but what's one of the major rewards that you think results?
I think that, of course, if you stay in a school long enough, you'll see children years later who've been in now it's third grade, who'll come by and say, I remember when I was doing this and that, and why don't you do this and that again? Or I still have the poem book that we used, and I still remember the poem. And Meg, who comes, and I'm sorry we couldn't show it on the tape, but she plays the guitar for me and accompanies some of the songs that the children do. And then there's another boy, I didn't talk about him, but he had problems, in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, but he always came back and always wanted to help me with something. So he always carried my props, which we didn't get into the props which we make, which are really really usually very simple, but a very good activity. You know, they make their out of old refrigerator boxes. They made a house for stone soup, and when we did Rapunzel, you know, Rapunzel had her hair.
And we saw a crown made out of
That's right.
aluminum foil.
And then the guards made some uniforms once. So we do make a few very simple uniforms or props or whatever we
I think
need.
you might mention the invitations and the posters. I'm always delighted when your class invites us over because we get such handsome invitations.
We usually have a competition for the invitations, and then I let somebody else choose it, and we've had some really attractive the children have made some very attractive invitations, and at the back they always do something that they can all do. They have a train where they all sign their name, you know, or something of that sort. So the posters, right, we of course plaster posters all over the university to get as many people to know about us. And
The sheer enjoyment that you see
Yes.
children experience in doing this kind of an activity, I think would be one of the daily rewards.
I think so. And then the brothers and sisters who want to be in my room, you know, because they said, oh, he was in the Three Wishes, and, you know, so I'd like to be in something too. I mean, the fact that they like to participate in it, I think is good for them. It's, in a way, it's bad for me because I always have to find some new material. When you said about the surefire things, I cannot always use them again because I say, oh, my brother did that last year.
Yeah.
So then it's, you know, good for me and good for them to always find new things.
Well, we appreciate very much the opportunity to have asked you these questions, and we all appreciate the opportunity to bring our students over to see your children work. And we hope that we've asked some of the questions that you would have asked if you had been in the studio with us today. And we hope that you will remember what the puppet said at the end of the Chipper Players program. Try it. Thank you for joining us.